walk in, sit down. So, yeah.
Look at this.
How good's that?
Fully mugged. Oh, this is unbelievable. The bicentenary.
Remember that?
Mate, I remember this.
Yeah.
I remember this. Like the back, honestly, like yesterday. No, I can hear me. I sound velvety.
Welcome to Second Wind, a show by the team at Also Known As, where we talk to colleagues and friends that inspire us. Today we're joined by Paulie Dery, Chief Marketing Officer at AG1. I had my AG1 this morning.
Oh, I can tell.
Yeah.
You're glowing.
Go to AG1/Gully Flowers to get 2 free packs.
This might be the only podcast not sponsored by AG1. Kerrie, how do you know Gully?
I know Gully through Jake, and Jake and I know each other because I built the reputation of Media Monks from their day of one office, and Jake was doing the work through the business development side, and we sort of built Media Monks together.
Paulie's the mind behind some of the most obsessively loved brands of our time. Yeti comes to mind. He built the in-house agency there for 5 years, made it one of the most beloved brands in the world. He also has one of the strongest perspectives I've heard from a marketing leader, and I hear a lot of them.
Good to be here.
Also, my name's Gully Flowers, co-host of Second Wind, joined by Kerrie Finch all the way from
Good day.
And we're here live from South by.
It's good to be in the hometown, Austin, Texas. She's showing off today, nice and hot. The first question of how do you thread the needle? Know who you are, I think, is a big part of it. I've been lucky to work on some great brands, Uber, now AG1 and Yeti. And I think the key is just know who you are and know who you're not. I think brands get themselves in real pretzels when they're like, hey, we're all about this, but we're also all about this because we love you over there and we want your business, And I think the more focused you are on who you think your core is, just stay with them. And what I mean by that, and there's probably 2 ways. Stay with them in your advertising, right? Like make sure your ads are focused on the core, and that matters. But then also show up for them, right? Like I think my time at Yeti and now AG1, we're really focused on the people that use the product and embrace the product, from fisher folk to hunters to bull riders to brisket smokers. Stay focused on them and put them in your advertising and don't stray, and then show up for them, right? AG1's the same. We turn up to a ton of events. They're small, but it shows that community we're really invested in you. And that core customer really understands you for them and about them. And then I think it just helps you get out of these situations on what you're for and what you're not. We certainly we're focused on the product. We're not super focused on the politics behind it. Here's who we're for and what we love. And it drew in a much bigger audience. Just go niche to go mass. Right, you focus on these people. You can focus your media in different places for sure. Yeti, we'd advertise in People magazine. A lot of customers of Yeti are mothers of 3 who sit sideline at a soccer game. We're not going to put her in an ad, right? We don't have to. She gets it. She sees the world we represent, understands it, likes it, feels like she wants to be part of it, knows the product's great, and comes in. So it's really, I think, to your opening question, a political question. Thanks, Gull, out the gate. Nice, he's a softball.
Talk about politics.
Yeah. What do we want, our 7th Prime Minister this year, or are we? Yeah.
Prime Minister.
We're waiting for Dave Droga. Just know who you are and stay out of what you're not. I think a good one, and I think people respect it. People do love us in the Hamptons, and they love us in Alabama, is because we are what we are. We're not apologetic about it. Don't pretend to be something we're not, and that's how you navigate it. Like I said, my time at Uber, we really were, because the brand was under such pressure. It really
performance pressure, growth.
No, the house was on fire, right? Like reputation. When I joined, it was like, oh boy, and that was the challenge. Like turn that around.
Had Kalnick left at that point?
We had a transition period. Okay. Yep, where I was, and then Dara came in. Yeah, yep, and Dara's still there, and now it's a great business. Anyway, it's another story, I think, on how we grew. We navigated those waters and built a great brand, and it's a grown-up brand. It's a leader, and that's exactly what the mission was.
What made you move on from Yeti to AG1?
Yeah, good question. So I actually saw a lot of similarities. Every move I've made, people were like, "That's dumb." I left RGA, like the greatest agency on the planet at the time, for Uber, and Uber was going through its stuff. People were like, "That's dumb." And then I left Uber after we IPO'd to a little cooler brand that was really only really known in Texas and Florida, and people were like, "That's dumb." And again, people are like, "Wow, you're going AG1? That's interesting." Well, I see a lot of similarities. I see about the same size business when I joined Yeti. Yeti was about 500-600 mil. It's now doing 2 bill. And same with AG. AG is doing 600. And I look at it and I go, what a great business, a cult following, a D2C darling. If you could put a brand on top of this, direct to consumer, you can quote me on that one. If you could put a brand on top of this, I think the health category is screaming for it. And I think you could do something really impactful. I also think it is the most premium product in the category. Everyone came and followed, much like Yeti. And I think the other thing is health in this country is a real problem. And I think AG1, the three of us didn't grow up in this country. We had free healthcare. You don't get that here. It's expensive to be sick here. And I think taking control of your health is what AG1 gives you. And I think that's pretty special. And I think keeping people healthy and out of medical debt is actually pretty important.
So who was behind the idea that you had to sponsor every single podcast?
Except this one. Look, I think full credit to AG1 at the time. Look, the creator economy was early. Podcasting was early. COVID was causing havoc. And it's incredible that AG1 went, look, let's invest here and get into it. And I think, full credit. At the time, it was really the creator economy. It was the only way people could earn money. COVID had shut the world down. And we were, the business was like, look, I think there's a lot of value in here. I think we can support a lot of people. I think we can get our message out. So I really applaud it. And I think it's that playbook that everybody copied. And that's the problem. When you do something new and interesting and it works, everybody floods in and copies. And that's the problem. And I always tell my team, you wrote the playbook on this. Incredible. Now, as leaders, you got to go rewrite it. And that's the job. And that's what we're going through now. How do we rewrite it? And I think a lot of our podcasters, in the early day, they were acquisition machines. And now you got to think of them, hey, they're brand building machines now, right? A podcaster just got a president elected. And that's a lot of influence. I think the podcast community now has a lot of people used to turn to it as an alternative news source. Now it is your news source. All right. And so I think you got to start thinking about those channels as brand, not performance. And that's all part of rewriting the playbook.
That's a perfect segue. I have a bunch of other questions. I want to hear about your first job in advertising. I want to hear about your favorite piece of work you worked on. I want to hear about favorite piece of work you didn't work on.
I want to hear about all your mistakes.
Oh my God, jeez. Questions coming.
Since the brand versus performance thing, I think there's a couple of pieces to this, right? It's like traditionally creative agencies were given the ability to lead the brand building, and they were empowered to do that. And what I see largely in the marketplace today is, creative agencies are on their heels. It's a very difficult business to succeed in. All the M&A activity we see is not because everyone's doing great. It's because there's a lot of pressure on agencies to try and survive and thrive. And so without that creative stewardship, let's call it, for the brand building components, and, within the context of so many D2C darlings building their businesses on performance and podcasts and more direct channels, how do you turn the ship? Because it seems like we've siloed a lot of those things. So, the performance team's off doing the emails and whatever, and then the brand team's doing the commercials.
Yeah.
So how do you convince, I guess the question, very long question, is how do you convince a performance-oriented organization to invest in brand?
Yeah. Is a good question, Gal. There's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, exactly. Look, two things. And the blunt answer is know what you're hiring when you hire me, right? So a brand builder, right? But also for me, look at what the world gives you, what the world's giving your brand. So for me, I look at brands that are, performance darlings, right? And have used acquisition to drive great business, but then, and took their foot off brand, and now there's a problem, right? And I think we see a lot of brands in the world right now, we call it the doom loop. Acquisition was easy during COVID, things were flying. I don't have to spend in a brand, it's just happening for me. They wake up one day now and they're like, oh God, like, what's happened to my business? To scale and to grow, you need both humming, right? And it's just, this is what we're seeing with so many brands right now. They are like clamoring to get back into brand. Oh, we need to be a great brand. And it's like, well, too late. You fucked this. Yeah. And so the answer to that is the businesses that are in that situation, that's great. Because we come in, as brand builders and should be like, well, you've already run the test, right? If you stop spending in the brand, your business is in trouble. Yeah. So let's not do that again. Don't tell me that building a brand isn't going to help my business, because you've run the test and it sucked. So shut up and let me go build a brand. And that was the premise for me joining. Was
who's that conversation with?
Well, with
CEO.
Yeah. Exactly. Now AG1's different. It's a great business, and it's humming. They were just had the foresight to go, wow, if we could build a brand on top of this, this would be tremendous. So they were actually, ahead of the game. But what you are seeing a lot in the market is it's too late.
The market got saturated, customer acquisition costs went up significantly, yep. Discounts, people are switching, there's no loyalty, right?
Yeah, and I think the customer doesn't understand what the brand's about. Yep. I think the acquisition model turns you to try and get everyone. Yep. And if you're trying to get everyone, you're for no one, right? We've heard that before, and that's really true in the acquisition engine. Yeah. So I think that's what you're seeing, and that's what I mean by brand and knowing who you are.
Brand and performance
at AG, yeah, absolutely, and I think it's really important because the acquisition team have been phenomenal, and they're a phenomenal engine, phenomenal muscle. They've gotten on board with like, okay, if he wants to build a brand and this is what he wants, let's give it to him and try and make acquisition beautiful again, right? And if you combine that with great storytelling and brand, all of a sudden they wake up and the world's easier because the pond's been restocked, right? It's like instead of them grinding out for customers, they just wake up and it's happening, right? And their costs go down and life's good. The quicker I could show people that, the quicker everyone was like, okay, maybe he does know what he's on about. He's not an idiot after all, and I think that's important. I totally bypassed the original question, which was...
But beautifully.
Okay, thank you. Brand and acquisition have to work together, but, I'm a brand-led marketer.
Acquisition's got to follow brand.
Yeah, and I'm a brand-led marketer, and I'll die on that hill because I want to feel something about the brand I'm buying into. And this is something I always say, right? You can't be a commodity, right? There were taxis before Uber. There were cups and coolers before Yeti, and there were supplements before AG1.
The product has to be good.
I will not work at a place where the product isn't the best. I am not that good a marketer, right? So that's a given.
That's the challenge for like a P&G marketer.
Yeah.
Your product is sort of like a bit mid.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. And you have to figure out a way to try and, have pricing power, feel different, be chosen on the shelf when there's 30 other options.
I think their problem's actually boredom. I think the worst job in the world would be like CMO of Nike or, Apple or something, because it's like, I could only make that worse.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Like it's so good. They're so good. But I look at something like Huggies or something, and I'm like, if I could do just fractionally better work in that space,
sleeping giant,
I would look like they would stand out so much. And isn't that exciting? Yeah. Like if I'm in those machines, you should be the most cavalier marketer on the planet, right? Now they're not, because they want you to not do that. But my goodness, if you could do that, look at Liquid Death. Everyone loves Liquid Death. Yeah, because they took on water. Look at Vital Farms. They took on eggs. you know, that's the game you'd love to be playing, you know. And I've never seen like a brand you love and finish. I love this brand, and the sentence doesn't finish with "yeah, but they're bankrupt," right? It doesn't work that way. It's like I love that brand, and they're on fire, right? So something's working if you do good work, and I think you got to use that fear, and I think you got to use the success that everybody enjoys when you do something good to do more. And I think that's a big one for me. People always like, yeah, sorry, Karen.
No, I just want to find out how important is creativity in that whole mix.
It's the only thing.
Right.
Because I tell you why. You get to places like Uber, it's full of engineers, it's full of MBAs, it's full of really smart, probably a little bit socially awkward people, right? And you're this ad guy wearing a baseball hat, and they're like, oh, God.
You're like Apple and Nike.
Yeah, they're like, get out of here, you know? But the minute you can tell great stories about their products and the work that they do, doesn't the worm turn, right? All of a sudden, they're going home and their partners or mums or friends are saying, did you do that? Is that what you do? Whoa,
So it's
right?
making a difference, huh?
They feel so good about what they do. They come into the office. Hey man, can you join this meeting? Can we work on something else? Right?
Need more meetings.
And that goes all the way up to the C-suite. The C-suite start feeling good about themselves. They're humans. Investors start saying, hey, I love that. You guys are doing great stuff. The CFO starts getting a bit of swagger in them. You know, that is creativity. Creativity is doing that for the marketer that could have just sat in the middle and ridden it out. Or you could go do something that makes people feel great that then just breeds more creativity and good stuff. So to the person in the middle, get out of the fucking way. We don't need more boring marketers. We have plenty, right? If you can be 3 centimeters better than the marketer next to you, you're actually 8 miles ahead, right? And
That's what a centimeter is, mate.
it's metric. But I switched it to miles. See that? Incredible. I'm an international man, you know. Furlongs, a lot of leagues. How big's a league?
So how do you refresh your world creatively? What inspires you? What helps you, move your needle? What, personally?
Yeah, look, I love ideas. I grew up in advertising as a kid. I read every advertising newsletter every morning, every email.
Business?
What's that?
Was it a family business?
It wasn't a family business per se. Dad was the boss. And he was M&C Saatchi Australia.
Big one.
Great agency in Australia. Really, were pioneers for their time. But that's a whole other combo. Being the boss's son is hard because we made a point of me starting at the bottom. They don't care who your dad is, right? Creativity doesn't care. It's
like back in the day.
Yeah.
Agencies were fucking wild places.
They were fun.
My first agency, people were screaming. I was going, what? I feel like I was back in high school.
Yeah.
Teachers.
I mean, I wished it was like that still, right? It was so much fun. Yeah. The amount of ambulances each holiday party, it was like that was like how good the party was. You either got a good idea or you don't. There's no nepotism in that, and the client doesn't know who you are, you know. So that was really fun.
Never busted out in a meeting. Excuse me, my father's.
Yeah.
Just let me answer
Yeah.
that.
But I love it. Yeah, working with Dad, he's the best guy. He's an amazing, and this is what I love about him. He is the ultimate protector of great creativity as a suit, you know. And you really appreciated. He would die on a hill for creative, and I think that seeing that at a young age really meant something. Yeah.
That's rare.
Yeah.
But usually the best ones are.
Where do you get your inspiration? Where do you regenerate? How do you do that?
I mean, it's probably from a 7-year-old that I put to bed every night. There's more creative. No, yeah, there's. I try and keep it to my one. You know, it causes issues if it's not. But no, you know, they're full of crazy ideas, which I love. But I think for me, it's like moving brands forward. Anyone that's moving a brand, I know how hard it is to move a brand in any direction. Anyone who's doing that gives me enormous joy. And seeing great work, you know, I look, I could say it's a cliche. Oh, I find it in art. I find it in other things. I don't. I am an advertising junkie. I love advertising ideas.
You know, that focus.
Yeah.
You know, that's utter dedication. That's utter focus. You found your passion. You found your place to be.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, and what a great job. We wake up and deal in ideas, but there is a difference between a great idea and a great advertising idea. And you know, I'm obsessed with great advertising ideas because they solve so many problems, which is incredible. How can creativity solve business problem? Like, what a gift we're given to go work in.
Business problems. I mean, as a child of the 80s, I remember slip, slop, slap.
Yeah.
And Australia, not many Americans would realize this, but Australia is a country where the government is one of the biggest advertisers.
Yep.
And a lot of it is PSAs, we don't call them that, but, you know, it's campaigns that try to make people's lives better.
And they're creative.
And they're creative.
Yeah.
And they're actually, they're you know, they're clients that creatives want to work on.
Yeah.
Because the work can be really, you know, high profile. You know, you can move the culture through the work, which is a pretty incredible.
Nothing better when you wake up and you see your work is doing something in culture for sure.
In Australia, that was
I have
slip on a
no
shirt,
idea what you're talking
slap
about.
on a hat.
Oh,
Slap on some sunscreen. Yeah.
And for a generation of kids, that was, you know,
Yeah.
embedded in our brains.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about, you know, you talk about core audiences,
Mm.
and I think that is my challenge is like, why aren't more brands able to figure out these are our hardcore audiences, and you know, these are the ones we need to focus on, because pretty much every brief I see
Is everyone
is still 18. Oh, we just want to go after men.
Yeah.
You know, and it sounds simple for you to say, oh, just lean into your hardcore users or find your, you know, super fans. But I think you're one of the only people who's actually doing it.
One, I think a brief's often like it actually just chases the largest audience, right? And that's wrong, because that mightn't be right. At Yeti and AG1, we actually used our ambassadors a lot. We brought them on as official ambassadors who were the best in the fishing world, the best in the bull riding world, the best in the mountain climbing. Yeah, like and
actual ambassadors who
of the brand,
who are living and breathing the brand.
Yeah, and you know, they weren't household names, but if you ask the community who's who, they would tell you that this.
Find those sports.
So, well, yeah, we have, you know, community marketing's a big piece of AG1, big piece of Yeti. You get a sense of who's embraced the product, right? You go deep in those communities. You build relationships with those communities. You then, you know, will have an ambassador or two. You've built a long enough relationship with that person that it's mutually agreeable that we love each other enough to do this. You know, it's not about the money. It's not LeBron James deals. This is a tick of pride, right? And they're on the ground, just being seen with you is a big deal to that community and how we represent each other. But those people will really give you good insight. I'd say 2 years before any market research could come back to you. So they're like, hey, you know, we've seen this kid. He's coming up. He's pretty good. You know, I think he's going to be, you should talk to him, build a relationship. That's helpful.
The community's excited about him.
Yeah.
He's the emerging talent.
Yeah. And then same with product. Like, hey, you know, it would be good if the product could do this for us. Or vice versa. Hey, the last thing you brought out, you know,
This
it's kind
is
of
more Yeti than AG1, because AG1.
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. You know, but you can get ahead of it by understanding what your community is saying, and just by turning up at events, right? Like we turn up at events.
What kind of events are you going to?
Might be turning up on a pier one, you know, where people are,
Right.
or you know, yeah, there's a charity event that we've always been to. You don't want to leave somewhere you.
Marketers are leading your engagement with that community.
Yeah.
Going through the brand ambassadors.
Yeah, and our community team are empowered to like be embedded with them,
because
you know,
they're almost driving the strategy for the whole business.
100%.
It's almost like above the CMO in a way.
Yeah, so we call it, you know, depth and breadth, right? You go deep in the community, you really understand them, you build incredible relationships, you become part of the family. Good luck as a competitor coming in and trying knocking off a family member, right? But then there's, it's a healthy back and forth relationship on what you need, what's good, what's not, and they're giving you good intel all the time. Hey, have you noticed you've popped up in the back country here? Oh, we didn't.
Is this weekly call? I mean,
yeah, daily. If we didn't know someone was having a baby or having a birthday, that's a, I'd be shocked. And so,
talking about here, Yeti.
What's that?
100 different communities, 50. I mean, how many groups are we talking about?
No, like AG1, it's probably 5 core communities, but then it expands, And I said we don't choose the community chooses us, right? So when you go into a new territory, we might go in thinking Ironman is the great way in for AG1, and the Europeans may say, no, it's alpine skiing, and that's who's using the product. Well, great. We're into alpine skiing, or, we're into tiddlywinks. Whatever it is, the product tells you where to go. You shouldn't, right? And I think that's a long answer to your question of who are you targeting? I think everyone would be like, man, you should go after Brooklyn. You know how many consumers are there? And you guys would crush it. Hip-hop. You guys would crush it out, and it's like, is Brooklyn signified anything to us that they're all in on being a core? No. Are there customers in Brooklyn? Absolutely, right? But it's not the target. Target your core, talk to your core. Everyone will follow because they respect that you are staying true.
What made you come to the States? What was that all about?
Good question. I clicked on the only banner I've ever clicked on in my life. I did a road trip around the States, loved it so much with my 2 best mates. Came back, sat at my desk at M&C Saatchi, and there was a banner ad saying, enter the US visa lottery, green card lottery.
We were so lucky
And I clicked on it.
The Brits don't have this lottery.
And I got, like a year later, a scanned PDF from Condoleezza Rice saying congratulations, which I thought was a scam. And the email finished with, keep an eye out for a package in the mail, which was even more suspicious. Yeah. You are kidding. Man, how's that for ROI?
Do you know how long it took me to get a green card? 13 years.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Boy, they were stoked when they gave it to you.
Got one even then?
Yeah. They must have.
Now, mate, I've got a bit more.
You're official now,
Shoulders
Gully.
are back.
Oh, mate. I'd say.
Between Australia and the US, the way that the people work and the way that consumers buy into advertising, what are the main differences?
A couple of things. I'd say, I wanted to go to the States to, the world of digital had started, and we didn't really understand that. I think Australia does amazing advertising. I think it's a bedrock of incredible creatives. Yeah, it's awesome. But we were slow, I think, I understand really what was happening in the digital world at speed. And so, I looked at RGA and I was like, I want to work there. There's an Aussie there named Nick Law. I'd love to work for him. And so I turned up with a printed out book, which is pretty funny. I don't think they knew what that was. Nick didn't. I got hired through a chap named Chapin Clark, who's a legend. Yeah, answered my texts. But no, and then Nick, of course, the greatest creative leader of our time, I think, and we became great friends through the process. So you really understood. For me, it was building that skill of digital. The other thing is, I think Americans are specialists. You grow up, because I think there's just so many of them. You become up being very good at one thing. Australians, we don't have that population or luxury. You have to be good at many things, or at least try to be. And I think when we come to America, it helps. It helps that you kind of can learn quick about other things and build that. And I think that's why in that period, there are a lot of Australians who came over and did pretty good. But what I loved about RGA was just the sheer scale. Like, you're talking to coders and, technologists and all these people you just wouldn't interact with back home, and you're throwing in a creative idea with those people. It inevitably just got better, and I love that about my time at RGA. So I think that was the real difference, the embrace of technology in the digital world. Tom Mack, the wizard, would always have the last say on everything. And that's why, he's made more iconic Australian ads than anyone. So, you want to grow up in a really creatively strong place where it's treasured. If you grow up in a place where it's not, I don't know how you're going to grow up to be a great creative. And it was the same at RGA. Nick wasn't just a creative chief. Nick was everything, Yeah, the business, So when your creative leader's in charge, it really helps. I think it's a big reason I became a CMO. I just sat across there and I was like, geez, it'd be a lot easier if I was that guy. You know what I mean? Wouldn't it be easier? Like, I just think it'd be so much easier. And, I credit Uber and Yeti and AG1 for allowing that to happen, where they thought the same thing. We're like, maybe if we let these creative people make a decision, it might get better work. And I think hopefully that's what we see. But the other thing is, you always have to sit across from a CMO and think, revere them, right? They must know so much more than me. Absolutely do not, yeah. But I think as an agency, I think that's important to understand. That they don't know more than you. You know actually a fair bit more than them. I think the difference is they know their business, and if an agency can get to know their business better, I think that is the great unlock. So many agencies don't go that effort. Yeah. So many agencies don't do that. And it drives me nuts.
Such a basic point, and it's vital. And I absolutely agree with you that so many people just don't get involved enough with the actual client brand.
You're too quick to stop thumping on the table.
I'm getting
exactly
involved.
I agree. A good Uber example. Every agency would come and pitch you like, you should do a free ride day. Everyone gets a free ride. Oh, that's cool. How many rides do you think we do a day? Don't know. Okay, well, how much is a ride?
They didn't really show
Don't know. Right?
How many times did you see that idea?
Do we have the name of who suggested?
It was every single one of them. So no. There were a lot of great people. And I go, oh, cool. So that would cost us about $120 million that day. So if I gave you $120 million to do an ad campaign, is this the idea you would bring me? Right? The other thing is, at that time, it wasn't really about the rider. Anyone who knew the Uber business knew it was about the driver. We needed drivers, and we needed drivers to love being on Uber,
The feedback, though, this is the input, rather, that you're getting from your agency. How long did you work with that agency before you chose another agency?
Well, that's why I built in-house model.
Right.
And that's why, Yeti has the greatest in-house team on the planet at the moment.
Except for AG1.
Well, AG1 we're building. And I think we're already putting out tremendous work. I mean, I look back on the 6 months, I'm like, good God, look at the scale and quality of this work and how long it would have taken me to get this out of an agency is mind-blowing. So that is my answer. I don't want to deal with agencies, actually. If
you don't deal with agencies at all at AG1?
No, not anymore. And it's because I want people in my business. What?
Stop pitching
Please. I want people in my business who understand the business, who I can shorthand, who are thinking about my business. And it doesn't take me 4 months just for them to finally click, right? And if I am going to invest 4 months for them to finally click, they work for me, and that's worth it,
So why do you think it is that more brands don't do what you're doing? If you are seeing clear benefits from using and building your own in-house team, and you've seen the benefits, at Uber, at Yeti, and now at AG1, why don't more brands do this, do you think?
Well, I think we have seen an explosion of the in-house model. The other thing I would say, not to say that I am anything special, but I am a creative, right, by trade. And I think having someone who has grown up as an ECD, as the CMO and creating an in-house agency,
pretty unusual too.
Helps, right? Like, I think, sometimes I always say, like, is the body ready for the organ, or is it going to reject it, right? So a lot of companies will say, I want an in-house model because I'm sick of dealing with these agencies. I think it's cheaper. I think it could be faster. But they don't have an ability to accept all of the craziness that comes with building an in-house agency and dealing with those people. Like they will go and hire a really awarded ECD who might be a total lunatic, who has no idea how to talk the talk to a C-suite, who has no idea how to infiltrate a business and work an idea up through the system. And that's really hard, right? And that takes work. I have many failures before success, but Uber helped me understand how to navigate this chaos of a big organization, right? And you take that on and you get a little bit better every time. So it's not easy, right? I don't think there are brands out there whose CMOs, are creative leaders as well and understand what it takes to build that takes some finessing. But I think, you have seen an explosion in the in-house model because something's broken with the agencies. All right. I love the creatives of the agencies. I love the people of the agencies, but something's wrong. Yeah. And that's the what you see is in-house growing. I think it'll come back one day when agencies work it out. I don't know what the answer is, but something's wrong.
Can we talk a little bit about some specific things you do to replicate the magic of the agency in-house? Because I think process and operations is a bit underrated. We see a lot of in-house agencies, and it ranges from like totally separate teams where you're essentially just taking the agency and hiring them all, but you still have that gap of marketing is the clients, and we don't really work with them necessarily. We present to them, so you're fully replicating that. And then other people, it's like 6 people. It's a producer and a creative, and they go, "We've got an in-house agency. Do all our production in-house." I'm going, "What are you talking about?" But I guess the question is more about how do you hire and build an in-house agency that protects the creatives, but empowers them to do great work without getting pulled into what's this banner? What should the banner say? Or, whatever that is. How do you great creative work in an in-house agency?
Yeah, I think it helps just to have a shorthand, right? Like I'm always like, people just come up with I don't need a deck. They're just like, hey, you've had this thought. I'm like, that's great. Let's go.
So the process is more informal.
In some regards, absolutely. There's a shorthand, right? And it helps when you're the guy that can approve the idea and write the check, right? For sure. So there is that shorthand that speeds up. The other thing is, I find all creatives want to do is make things. So can I, at very least, I think that's what I give a creative person that wants to come work with me. Like, we will make more work than you would ever make in a lifetime in a year, all right? And that's very rewarding. I also think once you start to see that he's not lying, right? Like, we're putting a lot of work. I could get stuff sold here in an instant, right? If the idea is good, that breeds a totally different culture, right? Because then all you're trying to do is just make it great because you know it's going to get made, right? And that is awesome. I will say, so that shorthand really helps. Seeing your work live, seeing that if it is a good idea, we're going to go make it. That is liberating, I think. As a creative, your whole life is, God, will this ever get made? And you're going to make it a little less better because you just want to go on the shoot finally after 9 months of trying to sell an idea. But also, I think the best hires I've ever made are the marketing ops person. Courtney Barry at Yeti was just, she changed the world because she organized that into a process that the rest of the business could work with.
Courtney, we'd love to have you on the pod.
And that's a gift. For me, it also took a lot of pressure on me. I never had to worry about when's this due? When do I have to approve this? The process worked, and then it was just focus on the work. The other thing I will say about the role of CMO is marketing is not a very big part of your day. Actually, you are running the business as a whole. You are on the leadership team running the business. I find myself in meetings. We're talking about our supply chain. I'm like, how did I get here? But it's important, right? And it's important that marketing has a seat at that table and
you don't have anything.
That's right. Yeah. And if you've got the trust of your peers at the C-suite about how we're running the business, then they're like, you know what, I reckon he's doing a pretty good job on marketing. Let's let him do that. Yeah. And I think that's a relationship I think a lot of people don't see. How well is your CMO working with their peers? Because if they have a great relationship, they're going to leave them alone and let them do their marketing. I always say, process protects you, right? Yeah. And you got to think of it that way. Yeah. You often get briefs. I'm like, why are we doing this?
Oh, really?
Who cares? Yeah. Focus on what's really important, and what's going to make the most impact. And that's where your energy should be.
What mistakes have you made that have really taken you to the next level, where you've really learned from something, and it may have been absolute pain as it happened, but what have you learned from?
I think I have a pretty high bar. I think not everything can be an award-winning idea. No. There are some there are some requests from the business. You set the bar, you make sure it's fine, it's good, it's healthy. Pick your battles. Right? I think, having a team go really hard on something that, is like, we got to get it done. Like, it's important, but it's okay to do it, put it out, be okay with it, and then go focus on the good stuff. So it's really energy, I think. Having people's energy really focused, which is why, I do go back to, like, here are the 3 things that we're focused on. That's where I want your energy, because I think I learned the hard way, where I thought everything that goes out the door, people know it's from me, right? Oh, Paulie's out there. That's him. And I took that really personal. And I didn't want anyone to say, oh, what's that? And I realized you just can't live like that, right? You got to have the general suite of work should be phenomenal, but that's it. It's the general suite. It's not everything. Well, Yeti had been making, always had a great heritage of filmmaking. So it was just carrying that on, and not letting that die was important. I think a big step. The other thing, we always used to joke, like, once the CFO found my office, we might be in trouble, And, I think it's silly. People are like, well, what's the ROI on those films? And how do you prove, And I have this KPI, and it drives CFOs insane. It's energy, right? And, like, can you feel the energy in the brand?
Is the team excited internally? Is that within?
Also, that when you turn up to an event, people really happy you're there. Yeah. People
this is a gut
KPI. Sell that in, though. So it is a sensible question. How do you justify that? How does a CFO actually get their head around that?
I mean, look, there's a academic answer to that, where I think strong brands have great pricing power, and if you're a premium product that demands a pricing power, these are the things you have to do. So the truth is that Yeti, we had supportive CEOs that understood how strong the brand was, and understood that, okay, maybe you have to, it's a tax, right? Like, you have to do this stuff to keep the brand strong, and they understood it, right? Yeah. So I think how I would answer that is, don't work at a place that doesn't understand it or doesn't want to understand it, right?
Creativity means business.
Brand is good for the business. And it's like being with the girlfriend, boyfriend that, I'll change them. I'll be the one that changes them. No, you won't. They don't want to change. So don't work at a place that don't want to change, right? Because it's not going to happen. You have to be at places like, my CFO at AG1 is amazing, but this is new for him. Yeah. Like building a brand, and he's like the number 1 fan. He's like, I loved that. That was awesome, and Aussie, obviously. Yeah. But I think it goes back because he's human too, right? He's seen already the uptick a great brand can bring a business, and he can sense that people are excited to work for AG1. They love it, and he's talking to an investor community that's like, oh, I saw that. That was cool. They're humans too, and they feel the energy. So I think that's important. I think you can't change the mind of a CFO that just has no understanding or wanting to understand. I think that's very hard.
What do you want people to say about you and your work?
He tried.
He had a crack.
He tried.
Okay.
No, I think I would like them to think that, you know, I really felt something for the brands he represented. You know, I felt they were more than just a useful product.
You believed in them.
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, at Uber, it wasn't about being a taxi. It was about a way for you to earn on your terms that you could actually take control of your life as a driver, right? You know, at Yeti, it was about being part of this wonderful world we call the wild and protecting that and enjoying that and celebrating all the characters that made up that world. Even if you've never met one of these people, you don't live in these areas, you don't understand them, I would appreciate them. And I think, you know, that mattered. And at AG1, taking control of your health, and you determining to make a difference. You know, I think if people look back and go, Uber's a taxi, Yeti's a cup, and AG1's a supplement, I've failed and I put me in the ground.
Paulie, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Gal.
The idea of stopping taking AG1 is terrifying for me.
Why?
Because I get sick.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a 3 and a 5-year-old, and AG, especially when I travel for work.
Yeah.
If I don't have AG1 on,